Hey, what's up, everybody? Josh Bennett here with Money Masters, the channel where I help you earn more, keep more, and grow more money. In this video, we're going to talk about the next evolution of the GameStop AMC frenzy that was triggered by Reddit, a Reddit group called Wallstreetbets. So if you haven't been paying attention to the news the past week, just by way of giving you a little bit of background, last week there was a group of Redditors called on Reddit called Wallstreetbets that essentially rallied together to, essentially fight the hedge funds, or that's what they, kind of viewed that they were doing by taking companies like GameStop and artificially pumping them up in value to, go against hedge funds that were shorting the position, aka borrowing that stock to, essentially profit off the deterioration of that company. So Wallstreetbets wanted to sort of fight the man and pump up these stocks to essentially force them out of their, the hedge funders out of their positions at massive losses. So Melvin Capital, for example, had lost, tons and tons of money to the point where they had to be financed with billions of dollars to stay afloat. So that's kind of the update. But there's been an interesting turn of events, which I think is a good cautionary tale for anyone that's gets caught up not just in the GameStop frenzy, but gets caught up in the frenzy of buying and selling individual stocks that they haven't necessarily done their due diligence on or researched. And right now, what we're seeing with GameStop is, and IPOs recently, Tesla stock. Like GameStop's not the only one, but there's sort of a devoid from the reality of what the stock is actually worth. Which you could argue that the stock is worth what the people willing to buy it are willing to pay for it, which is true. But every stock has to have some sort of inherent value, and there needs to be some sort of backing for that value. It can't just be emotional, but that's not going to be very sustainable because emotions fade. Whereas like cash flow and things like that are more sustainable. So one of the things with this cautionary tale to kind of keep in mind is that you never know necessarily how you're being pushed to some of these hyped up stocks or these kind of sexier stocks in the news. Prime example would be with what's going on with GameStop for this. But before we kind of dive into this, I want to kind of give a quote that I think is really relevant to this by an author named Morgan Housel, who he's a pretty famous financial writer, but basically what he said is most financial mistakes come from when you try to force things to happen faster than is required. Compounding doesn't like when you try to use a cheat code. And I think that's really relevant right now is because basically what happened is people got caught up in the hype of GameStop and saw some people on Wallstreetbets making millions upon millions of dollars, and they got caught up in that frenzy. They tried to use a cheat code and make millions of dollars themselves without kind of considering what the repercussions were. And then following that story, we saw Robinhood come in, which I've recorded other videos, I'll link below, and basically start manipulating, use manipulating quotes because we don't know for sure if that's what they were doing. There's some lawsuits pending that will kind of determine that, but they basically, the actions they took impacted retail investors that were trying to pump the stock up, and a lot of people lost a lot of money speculating on Robinhood. And what we're seeing now even is, even with that story, how Robinhood makes their money is by providing liquidity to hedge funds. And so like hedge funds, for example, what a speculation is like you have a hedge fund like Citadel, which sees a lot of the liquidity coming from Robinhood, and they can basically make plays based on what Robinhood's doing. And for example, and then if say they know a Citadel other hedge fund is shorting GameStop, and they want to push a lot of people to buy GameStop and then purchase that hedge fund's fund at pennies on the dollar, that would be an interesting play. And not saying that's exactly what we saw happen, but just throwing that out there. You never necessarily know who's manipulating behind the scenes. And we're sort of seeing that right now with the markets is basically what's happened is the Wallstreetbets is actually now getting targeted by large amounts of bot activity. So it's getting to the point where a lot of people may be making bets based on these bots, what they think are other people and kind of the masses rallying together. But really, these bots, could be hedge funders essentially manipulating the market right back at these Wallstreetbets users. And so this is all a way of saying, like, you never necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes when you make emotional bets and try to use a cheat code in the markets in these scenarios. And that's why it's much better to have a cohesive strategy based on the incremental, not inherent value of the company itself. Just begin again, because like you see, this is targeted by bot activity, and if you even just scroll the Wallstreetbets page right now, you see a lot of people saying that these are not, like, the rally in silver is not really what they're targeting yet. That's what's being picked up by the news, and I haven't done full research on this yet, but supposedly there's a lot of hedge funds that are sort of banking on this play to try and pump up the prices of silver to make money that way. So this could be potentially the bots are hedge fund driven and being pumped in here to artificially drive up the news resources and things like that. So again, you just never know what string, when you're dealing with like momentum and news, you never know what strings are being pulled. So it's better to take a long-term approach based on the inherent value of the company. Again, this is kind of just a public service announcement in terms of what we're seeing with a lot of these stocks, but I thought this was valuable to just kind of show behind the scenes of, you just never know what's happening, especially in days of AI and things where things can move fast, and a computer created by a hedge fund could replicate what's happening on Reddit. But hopefully you found this video valuable. Make sure you like if you did, for the YouTube algorithm. But otherwise,